Have you ever heard of someone who just vanished off the face of the earth after messing with something they shouldn't? Yeah, some stories aren't meant to help you sleep at night. And this one will make you look at the woods behind your house a little differently. It all began in a village forgotten by time, wrapped in legends and shadows, where the nights were so dark that even the moon didn't dare to show her face. And it was there that a mysterious sorcerer dared to do tea. But don't be mistaken, this isn't just another tale of witchcraft told around a campfire. There are records. There are scars. There is fear. Ever since that spell was cast, the village has never known peace again. People started vanishing. Screams echoed through the night. Strange apparitions haunted the roads, and a mysterious cabin deep in the woods became the center of whispers. That's where they say the devil himself was summoned. Still think these are just bedtime stories? Terror settled over the village like a plague. And the worst part? No one had the courage to stop it. Or rather, almost no one. One day, a curious soul, or maybe just a fool, decided to uncover the truth. That's when the dark cult revealed itself. Rituals, sorcery, ancient entities, and a darkness so dense it felt like it was swallowing the air itself. What he saw inside that cabin can barely be described without sending chills down your spine. Now let me ask you this: how far would you go for answers? Would you dare to face the supernatural? To step into a cabin filled with smoke, screams, and spirits that never rest? Because in this story, fear is not the end, it's just the beginning. And it all started with a pact. A simple pact with the devil. So brace yourself, and if you can, light a candle next to you. You never know when the lights might go out. In a village long forgotten by time, nestled between fog-drenched mountains and a forest as thick and dark as the night itself, fear had always been a resident. The houses were crooked, the roads made of cracked, muddy paths, and silence would fall over everything the moment the sun dipped below the horizon. The elders would tell stories in hushed tones, always glancing over their shoulders as if the devil himself might be listening. And everyone there knew the same name, whispered with dread: the S. The cabin where he lived was avoided even by animals. They said the wind blew colder there, and the trees bent away from it, growing twisted, like they were trying to escape something. Children were strictly forbidden to go near, though a few brave or foolish ones dared to sneak closer, hoping to come back with stories of ghosts or maybe just a curse clinging to their skin. His real name was long forgotten, perhaps on purpose. Folks simply called him the man of the ritual, as if saying his name. But the villagers couldn't ignore the signs, no matter how hard they tried. The heavy air. The sudden cold shivers. The smell of sulfur after a storm. Everything pointed in his direction. It felt like hell itself was watching the village, and that this sorcerer was its gatekeeper. The line between reality and darkness had grown thin. Between what was natural and what was cursed. Every sunset brought more prayers, more crucifixes on the walls. But faith, it seemed, wasn't always enough. With time, the whispers turned to rumors, and the rumors turned to fear. A farmer went out to collect firewood and never came back. A woman claimed she saw the Brujo walking through the rain, muttering words in a language no one recognized, and the next morning, she was gone. Some said it was punishment for ancient sins, that the village was paying off some long-forgotten debt to old spirits. Maybe a forgotten pact. Others, more direct, claimed the village was cursed for letting the Brujo's cult caunt. Deep down, though, everyone knew this wasn't just folklore. It was real. And it was getting closer. The roots of sorcery ran deep beneath that land, and terror had become like a sickness, silent, invisible, contagious. Smiles faded. Eyes became wary. and the once isolated village had now become a nest of shadows and whispers. But no one dared confront it. Because, really, who would be foolish enough to stand against someone who could summon the devil himself? He always seemed to appear out of nowhere, like he stepped straight out of the mist that lingered over the village during the coldest nights. Dressed head to toe in long black robes, the Brujo looked like a walking shadow, a figure that moved slowly, but with some dark, hidden purpose. His eyes were the most talked about feature, piercing, unblinking, as if they could see beyond your skin and straight into your soul. People said that if you met his gaze, a chill would run down your spine, as if even though he lived nearby, he avoided all contact. He was never seen at the market, never joined village celebrations, not even funerals, and those had become more frequent. Strangely, though, he knew everything. When a woman got pregnant, he'd already know the child's gender before the midwife. When someone fell ill, he'd appear with a potion or a warning the hour has already been set. It was as if the spirits whispered their secrets straight into his ears. Animals would become restless whenever he passed. Dogs barked wildly. Chickens scattered. Horses refused to move. One man swore his cat died just from making eye contact with the Brujo. At least, that's what he said through tears. Children cried for no reason, and the elderly would make the sign of the cross the moment they spotted his silhouette in the distance. It was like a dark cloud of sorcery hovered around him, and everything nearby reacted to the terror he carried. His presence brought something more than fear, something deeper. An unease that settled in your gut, a voice inside your body screaming run, even when your mind couldn't explain why. At sunset, his shadow would often be seen standing perfectly still at the edge of the forest, watching. Just watching. And when he finally vanished, the silence left behind was even more disturbing. It was impossible to ignore him, even when he didn't say a single word. And yet, despite being feared by all, some people sought him out. Always at night. Always in secret. Some claimed to have seen figures sneaking into the cabin and leaving changed, like they'd left something behind. Others believed he had struck a deal with Satan himself, gaining access to the other side in exchange for offerings. And with that, the cult surrounding him grew stronger, even though no one dared to admit it out loud. At first, it started with whispers, cautious, almost afraid to take shape. But soon, those whispers turned into trembling confessions murmured in the ears of priests. How else could anyone explain the Brujo's powers? Sick people who returned from his cabin healed, as if they'd never coughed a single time. Children who survived fevers that even the capital's doctors couldn't cure. Was it a miracle? Or witchcraft? The elders didn't hesitate. They said it could only mean one thing: he had made a pact. Some swore they saw him deep in the forest, speaking to himself in front of a circle of carved stones, symbols glowing faintly in the moonlight. They claimed he spoke a language no one could recognize, something ancient, forbidden. And on nights of a full moon, people would hear muffled drums, strange chanting, even screams echoing through the trees. Were they rituals? Spells? Spirits being summoned as part of a dark, nameless cult? One evening, an elderly woman came to church with trembling hands and eyes full of tears. She said she saw him offer the blood of a black hen at the foot of a dead tree while praying to what she called Satan with golden horns. The priest told her to say 7 prayers and forget what she saw. But the villagers didn't forget. It was yet another sign the Brujo had sealed an agreement, and now the devil was collecting what was his. With each new appearance, the air grew heavier. It felt like something was about to snap. One day, a storm broke out from a clear sky just minutes after he passed by a newborn's crib. Another time, lightning split the chich's cross clean in half. Coincidence? The skeptics thought so, but the villagers knew better. When the world begins to turn upside down, it's usually because something beneath the earth is moving. Strangely enough, not everyone feared him. Some admired his power. A few said, if he really made a pact, at least he got something out of it. Younger folks, especially, would mock the fear of the older generation. Better to sell your soul and have power than live like cattle, they'd say with smirks. And slowly, in secret, imitators began to appear, hidden apprentices, small cults spreading like weeds. The Brujo was no longer just feared, he was being followed. The horror stopped being just a feeling the moment dead animals started showing up in the village. First, a ram was found completely drained of blood, no wounds, no signs of struggle. Then came chickens with scorched eyes and strange markings on their bodies, like they'd been used in a ritual. The villagers knew this wasn't the work of predators. It was witchcraft, dark, old, and powerful. Symbols carved into the dirt around the corpses confirmed it. Someone was performing live offering conjurations. The stories kept piling up. A man swore he saw a creature with glowing red eyes staring into his window after hearing a voice whisper his name in the dark. Another family found upside-down crosses buried in their backyard, covered in feathers and dirt. The priest tried to bless the homes, but with every blessing came a new fright. And always at night. Always with distant screams echoing from the direction of the sorcerer's cabin. No one wanted to admit it, but the disappearances began right after these events. First, a boy playing near the woods vanished like he was never there. Then, a fisherman ran back from the riverbank screaming about eyes in the water, and he was never seen again. Even a well-respected village elder vanished into thin air after saying she was going to put an end to all this. It was as if the darkness itself had started choosing its victims. Those brave or foolish enough to approach the Brujo's cabin came back shaken, mumbling about things no one could make sense of. Voices whispering in ancient tongues, laughter with no source, thick smoke rising from the chimney even when there was no fire. One man claimed he saw the Brujo floating above the altar, surrounded by a red light, calling forth unseen entities. When he got home, he began seeing things. Days later, he was found dead, eyes rolled back, a scorched symbol burned into his chest. By now, the village was consumed by fear. No one stepped outside at night. Windows were sealed with crucifixes and coarse salt. The cult of darkness seemed more alive than ever, feeding off every breath of terror. And all the while, the Brujo remained in his place, untouched, unbothered. Or rather, exactly where he wanted to be, watching, waiting, preparing the next step of the pact he'd made with the devil himself. There's always that one person who decides they've seen enough. In this story, it was Joachim, a seasoned villager, the kind of man who doesn't believe in legends until he sees them with his own eyes. After losing his daughter to one of the mysterious disappearances, he swore he would uncover whatever darkness had taken over the village. One silent night, armed with nothing but a lantern and a rosary around his neck, he climbed toward the Brujo's cabin. They say, before leaving, he looked up at the S. What Joachim found inside was not for the faint of heart. Satanic symbols painted on the walls. Ancient books bound in leather, maybe even human skin. And in the center, an altar stained with the remains of offerings, bones, melted black candles, feathers from creatures not even native to that region. At the heart of it all stood a small, twisted statue with curled horns and a cruel smile. Everything in that place felt alive, pulsing, watching. He could barely breathe, but something drove him deeper. In a dark corner of the cabin, he found something even worse, a kind of journal, filled with detailed notes of rituals, crossed out names, and dates of conjuring. But the most disturbing part, a list of villagers' names, some already marked with dried blood. His daughter's name was there too, next to a single word, offered. In that moment, Joachim understood this wasn't just a cult. It was a contract. A pact sealed with Satan, where souls were traded for power and dominion over ancient spirits. Terrified, Joachim bolted from the cabin, but not before hearing a deep, guttural voice whisper his name. And it wasn't human. When he reached the village, trembling and in tears, he tried to warn everyone. Many didn't believe him. Some made the sign of the cross and locked their doors tighter. But a few, the brave ones, knew it was time. They gathered in secret, carrying torches and prayers, ready to end the curse, no matter the cost. And so the fate of the village was set in motion. Sorcery was no longer lurking, it was active. The spirits were restless. The darkness had stopped being symbolic and had become something tangible. The villagers, once paralyzed by fear, were now walking straight into the origin of their nightmare. But what waited for them inside the cabin no one could have imagined. The final ritual was about to begin. And the Brujo was already waiting. That night, the entire village held its breath. The sky was overcast, moonless, and the wind blew cold as if it came from somewhere far beyond this world. Joachim led the group, their torches flickering, prayers whispered under their breath. Every step toward the cabin felt like a step away from sanity. When they arrived, the door was cracked open, and a foul smell, sulfur and burnt flesh, spilled out. The air was thick, and even the bravest among them hesitated. But it was already too late. The Brujo appeared before them, cloaked in shadow, as if the darkness itself obeyed his presence. He didn't speak. He only raised his arms, and the ground shook beneath their feet. From the altar, a red light began to pulse, growing brighter until something emerged that should never have existed, a demonic entity, unearthly and grotesque, with eyes like burning embers and a presence that drained the very hope from the air. It was as if Satan himself had answered the call. The villagers screamed, begged, prayed. One of the religious men tried to drive the entity back with a crucifix, but it melted in his hand. Then the Brujo spoke, his voice layered, deep, echoing with agony and power, and his true form was revealed. His eyes turned pitch black, his skin split like cracked leather, and horns burst through his skull. In that moment, he was no longer human. He was the herald of hell, the executor of the pact. The cabin burst into flames, not ordinary fire, but black fire, silent, devouring not wood but faith itself. The earth split open, like it was making way for the abyss. Some villagers ran. Others stood frozen, hypnotized by the demonic presence. Joachim, barely conscious, crawled toward the altar, trying to reach the ritual book. But a force unseen and violent threw him against the wall. Still, in one final act of defiance, he hurled his torch at the altar. The explosion of light and shadow that followed could be seen from the far side of the mountain. When the sun finally rose, the cabin was gone. So was the Brujo. So was Joachim. All that remained was a smoldering crater and strange, scorched markings on the ground, forming a forbidden symbol. The village would never be the same. And the pact? Well, they say it's still active, simply waiting for its next host. Because once evil is summoned, it doesn't just go away. After that night, silence returned to the village, but not the same kind of silence. This time, it was heavy, the kind that lingers in your bones. It wasn't fear of the Brujo's presence anymore, it was the void left in his absence. He was never seen again, and no one dared to look for him. The place where the mysterious cabin once stood was now avoided even by animals. The forest grew thicker around it, almost like it was trying to hide the crater or protect it. And if you listen closely at night, children were raised not to speak his name, not even to mention the devil out loud. A new priest came to town, but even he wouldn't go near the full truth of what had happened. Whenever the topic came up, he would simply cross himself and change the subject. Some say the cult still exists in secret, passed down through generations. Because witchcraft doesn't die, it only changes its face. It hides. It waits. Time passed, but the sense of a lingering curse never went away. Occasionally, a curious outsider would come asking questions about the Brujo, only to be met with blank stares and closed doors. The last person who tried to write a book about the legend vanished without a trace. Her car was found by the forest, engine still running, and a single torn page stuck under the wiper never challenged the unknown. Since then, no one has dared investigate again. And honestly, maybe that's for the best. The villagers learned to live with fear like it was part of them. No one walks alone at night. Salt is sprinkled on windowsills. And no one stares directly into the woods when the fog rolls in. Everything seems normal until it doesn't. A dead animal. A child claiming to dream about the man with the black eyes. A candle that goes out without a breeze. Signs. Reminders. That the pact may have been interrupted, but it was never broken. So if you ever find yourself near those woods or anywhere that seems too quiet, too strange, remember this: never underestimate legends. Never ignore the signs. And above all, never challenge the unknown. Because sometimes, when you stare too long into the dark stares back. So tell me, would you have the courage to investigate something like this? To walk into a cabin surrounded by rituals, dark whispers, and restless spirits that never sleep? Because what this story reveals goes beyond horror. It's a reminder. A warning. That there are forces in this world we don't understand, and playing with them comes at a price. A steep one. Sometimes, eternal. How many times do we ignore life's warnings out of pride, or just curiosity? How many doors do we open without knowing what might be waiting on the other side? This tale isn't just a ghost story. It's a mirror. A chance to reflect on how far we're willing to go for answers or for power. And what we're willing to lose along the way. Maybe you've already crossed paths with someone like the Brujo and never even realized it. Maybe there are pacts all around you, disguised in quiet forms, hiding behind smiles and shadows. The curse of that village might seem far away, buried in folklore, but what if it's just waiting for the next bold soul to come knocking? If this story gave you chills, made you pause, made your heart beat a little faster, then the message was delivered. Loud and clear. And if you want to keep diving deeper into this world of legends, apparitions, rituals, and the mysteries of the occult, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. And tell us in the comments, do you believe pacts with the devil still happen today?